Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. Man, has it been a week in the baseball world. My mental health is at an all-time Bres-Low, as the episode would dictate, as there's been some really interesting moves that are being labeled as pivots, as we are here in the middle of January and there's still a lot of guys unsigned, and some that are known as panic. And it starts with a report that I promoted here falsely on the last episode of Okamoto going to the Pirates, because I had seen it from retweeted and arbitrated by sources that I typically trust that are pumping out the news. And I did not double check it before I made the graphics and did the recording, but Okamoto ended up going to the Blue Jays, which started kind of a domino effect of sorts, because Okamoto is most likely going to be the opening day third baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays now as they continue their strong offseason. But that means that the Blue Jays are out on Alex Bregman. It means that they're very likely out on Bo Bichette. And what followed was truly mesmerizing, because Alex Bregman, after allegedly getting an aggressive offer from my Boston Red Sox — we always know when the Red Sox say aggressive or full throttle, it's usually not enough. And Alex Bregman ends up signing a 5-year, $175 million deal with the Chicago Cubs. No trade clause and less deferred money than what the Red Sox were offering. So, in fact, it was not an aggressive offer. They had fallen short in a couple of categories there. And this one really stung, because not that Alex Bregman's a homegrown superstar that we're losing like the last couple of years, losing Devers, Bogarts, and Mookie Betts respectively, but he truly seemed like the face of this new era of Boston Red Sox baseball. He really changed the culture and the mindset in the locker room. He's a winning player. He's made the playoffs every single year he's been in the big leagues. And he just seemed like he had been here for years in his 1 year with the Red Sox. So to not offer him a no trade after you just showed him what you're willing to do to a contract that you view as underwater in Rafael Devers, to defer a bunch of money when you are willing to pay him $40 million a season for the next 3 years, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me either. And the fact that he's playing for the Cubs now, I mean, I wish him nothing but the best, but it truly is an all-time Bres-Low for my Red Sox fandom, because I talked about it for a while, and I don't think I'll stop talking about it for years. Just the timing of the Rafael Devers trade, the return, the reasoning, the backup plans, everything about the Rafael Devers trade was suboptimal, in my opinion. From a baseball standpoint, you can argue from a financial standpoint, getting a team to take on that contract and save those dollars is cool. But what ended up happening is you did this without having Alex Bregman locked up long term, meaning that you gave yourself a hole at the third base or DH slot, wherever Devers ended up slotting in the rest of the way here in Boston. And right now, you have it penciled in as Marcelo Meyer at third. And I love the guy's personality, but Masataka Yoshida is a big downgrade at DH. So Alex Bregman to the Cubs is a huge move for them. It's the second biggest free agent contract they've ever signed. I think it's a showing of that organization wanting to win. I think that getting Craig Counsell in there from a division rival and making him the highest paid manager in baseball showed that they cared about winning. I loved that they were able to retain Imanaga on the qualifying offer. I didn't think he would accept it, but he did. So they have Imanaga back. They just made a big trade for Edward Cabrera, trading their number one prospect, Owen Casey, to the Miami Marlins to get Edward Cabrera, who has some really good under the hood numbers and, potential front of the rotation upside. Justin Steele on the mend. Offense that is still really, really good. You lose Kyle Tucker, but you bring in Alex Bregman. So, maybe a little bit less power and speed, but the defense and like I said, the leadership in the clubhouse is an upgrade. So I think it's a huge move for the Cubs. I think it's a huge, huge mistake for the Red Sox to let this man go, to let it drag out this long. As we've seen in the past, a lot of the Scott Boras guys that took forever to sign the year prior and took 1 year prove-it deals or multi-year deals with an opt-out after the first year, which are essentially glorified 1 year deals with protection if something goes bad. All of them have signed pretty early in free agency. Have signed in December, which used to be late, but now it's pretty early in free agency. Blake Snell, Pete Alonso, these guys wanted to find homes. And I think Alex Bregman did too. I think if the Red Sox gave the same offer that they gave, which is allegedly 5 years, 165, with no trade clause, I think the deferrals are kind of whatever. But that was just another icing on the cake. No trade clause, which they've given to Chris Sale, they've given to Dustin Pedroia, they've given to stars in the past. Alex Bregman would be here. And you'd have one less hole to fill on this team that, yes, has a lot of young talent. Yes, is still a wild card contending baseball team. Yes, went out and signed Ranger Suarez to 5 years, $130 million as their pivot move. Now, I would argue it was a little bit more panic. There was a lot of bad press when Alex Bregman signed elsewhere about their spending. They had not spent a single dollar in free agency yet. And I think this was more of a panic move because they're seeing how there's not a lot of options out there for third and second base. And in order to get that third or second baseman now, it's probably going to have to be through trade, which means you have to trade more pitching. You've already traded pitching to get Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras in here, some of your pitching depth, Richard Fitz and Hunter Dobbins. Now you have to trade another pitcher. So signing Ranger Suarez to me isn't this big pivot addition to what you have built and we're going all in on run prevention. To me, it means that Brian Bayo or Connolly Early or Peyton Tolley, one of those three young, controllable arms, is going to be the headliner in a deal for this team's second or third baseman on opening day. Now, from a team building perspective, that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on who that second or third baseman is. But a lot of the names that I've seen floated out there, Isaac Paredes, Nico Horner, they would be a downgrade from Bregman in his most important quality, which, like I said, is that leadership. Yes, they might be able to produce at the same or even a higher level in terms of counting stats as Alex Bregman did. Nico Horner is a better defender at his position than Alex Bregman is at third. But regardless, I don't think that those moves make your team better. Now, I'm going to put this out there. I've been wrong about a lot of stuff in free agency. But I'm going to put this out there because this is the thing that I haven't been able to get out of my head. Craig Bres-Low seems to only trade well with people he's traded with before. So that would be the Cardinals. That would be the Yankees. That would be the Brewers, the Pirates. When I think of a controllable, good defense, second or third baseman on one of those teams, right-handed bat, give me Bryce Terang. I know the Brewers are shopping Freddie Peralta because he has 1 year of control left and Terang has 4. But if you're going to be giving up Bayo plus, Early plus, Tolley plus to get the second or third baseman, I want a platinum glove defender. I want a guy up the middle with Trevor Story, with Ceddanne Rafaela in center that can do that. And I think the Brewers, especially, if you gave the Brewers Wilyer Abreu and Brian Bayo, they could turn one good asset into two. A gold glove caliber right fielder and a starting pitcher with a lot of promise and a good contract. I think you can get Bryce Terang. And then you have him who's hitting in the 280s, 18 home run pop, very similar numbers to Alex Bregman, but even better defense up the middle as opposed to in the corner. That's the move I want to see. I know people are talking about opening up the Ketel Marte trade rumors again. I think you'd have to, if you didn't like the price before, you're going to hate the price now for whatever that's going to cost you. It'll be more than what I just said with Brian Bayo, Willie Abreu. You have to add another good pitcher, a Kyson Witherspoon, a Marcus Phillips, pick your guy, David Sandlin, etc. I want Bryce Terang. That to me is a real pivot. Spending those assets for a real controllable guy. Not 1 year of Nico Horner, not 2 years of Isaac Paredes. Build this team for the future. Second base has been a huge hole for the Red Sox since Dustin Pedroia hurt his knee. Huge hole. Give me a platinum glove defender who can hit the baseball, who's been a 4 or 5 win player the last couple seasons, has 4 years of control. Give me that guy up the middle. Pay the stupid price for someone like that. That to me is a pivot. Ranger Suarez is the beginning of a panic, and I'm waiting for the other boot to drop to see what this trade is for an infielder before I give final judgment on the Red Sox offseason. In terms of other pivot and panic moves, it looked like the Blue Jays were the front runner to land Kyle Tucker. They had a 10-year contract on the table. Rumors are it was between 320 and 380 million. I've seen people say as low as 320. I've seen people say as high as 380. Let's just say it was 10 for 350. Let's meet in the middle. 35 million a year for 10 years. Well, the Mets said, hey, we don't want to do that, but we need an outfielder. So we'll give you $50 million a year, which ended up being a $55 million offer. They offered him 4 for 220. Really, really strong offer for Kyle Tucker, who, potentially prefers New York over Toronto, potentially prefers working less, basically half the years for the same kind of paycheck. And then the Dodgers swoop in, the team that I predicted him to go to all along. I didn't think it was going to be on this short term of a deal, but the Dodgers say, we'll give you $60 million a year to come play baseball and hit 5th for the Dodgers. And not only did the Mets and Blue Jays freak out, but all of Major League Baseball freaked out for a fit that just seemed so obvious to me. If you look at the Dodgers in the playoffs, their 2 biggest holes going into the postseason were they didn't have a lockdown closer. They went out and they won the bidding war for Edwin Diaz. And you're starting guys like Kike Hernandez and Alex Call and Andy Pages in your outfield. With how great the infield and pitching staff is, the starting pitching staff on this team, that outfield was below league average across the board. Teoscar Hernandez is a great hitter, but not a great defender either. They clearly needed to upgrade an outfield spot or 2. So for them to come swooping in out of nowhere, quote unquote, to get the best outfielder on the market is no shock to me. And whether Kyle Tucker preferred the shorter term or the longer term deal, the Dodgers gave him opt-outs after the 2nd and 3rd year so he can go and get that longer term contract if he wants to after the dust has settled from the lockout, or he can play and get 4 shots to win a World Series ring with the Dodgers over the next couple of years while Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Will Smith are all under contract hitting in front of him. I love this signing. I don't think it ruined baseball. The little teaser for the next section. But I think that the panic or pivot came up again when that signed, because then the Blue Jays, who I predicted to bring back Bo Bichette, had allegedly reached out to Bo Bichette. The Phillies put a 7-year, $200 million offer on the table for Bo Bichette, but Bo went to the New York Mets for $42 million a year. 3 years, $126 million. And Bo Bichette is going to be the Mets' opening day 3rd baseman, which opens up kind of another thing, a panic or pivot What is the other shoe that's going to drop from the Mets going to get Bo Bichette? Are they going to just pay more money and steal Cody Bellinger across town as they've done with some players the last couple off seasons? Are they going to trade for a front-end starting pitcher? Is Brett Baty going to be one of the big pieces in the Tarek Skubal trade that I had been predicting that they are the most obvious team to trade for him? What's that next shoe that's going to drop with the New York Mets? Are the Toronto Blue Jays done? Or are they going to make an offer to Cody Bellinger? Are they going to make a trade for another piece? What are the Phillies going to do? They went out and they pivoted and they said, okay, we're not going to mess around with JT Realmuto anymore. Here's the money he wants. 3 years, $45 million. We're bringing back our catcher. I was shocked it took him so long to find a home. I think he was holding out hope Philly would bring him back. I didn't think they could let him go, but they were playing the game like the Red Sox were with Alex Bregman, where they felt like he was always in the bag. And credit to them, they were able to bring him in after all. If I was a team with a young pitching staff and didn't have a locked-in catcher, I would have given JT Realmuto $20-25 million a year on a short-term deal, just to have him in the room and help develop that pitching staff, because that value is, I think, so overlooked in today's game, because there's a lot of throwers in today's game and not a lot of pitchers and people that are playing the mind games. So JT Realmuto back to the Phillies. Pivot or panic. Bo Bichette to the Mets. Pivot or panic. Ranger Suarez to the Red Sox. Pivot or panic. And as I alluded to, the baseball world is in panic after the Dodgers, who are back-to-back reigning World Series champions, end up signing the number one outfielder in Kyle Tucker and the number one reliever in Edwin Diaz. Those were their two biggest holes. They get hundreds of $millions a year from their TV deal. They get close to $100 million in merchandise sales and concessions. They have the Japanese media sponsors following them because they don't just sign the biggest Japanese stars, but they make it feel like home. They have developed such a great culture in Los Angeles to go along with some of the best weather this country has to offer. So no, the Dodgers are not ruining baseball. And no, Kyle Tucker signing with the Dodgers does not guarantee that there's going to be a lockout with no baseball played in 2027. I think the odds of that are the same they've always been, and it's because of the overall greed of the owners, not just the ones that play for Dodger baseball. To me, I don't think that this is that different from the 90s Yankees. I don't think it's that different from other years where teams went and signed all the free agents. You still got to win the baseball games. You still got to stay healthy. You still got to compete. The Blue Jays were a couple mistakes away in Game 6 and 7 from winning the World Series over the Dodgers. The year before, the Padres and Mets both had chances to knock the Dodgers out of the playoffs. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And while I understand many fan bases are going to look at them as villains, I look at them as the dream. As a Red Sox fan, I want the Red Sox to develop that kind of culture in the organization, that kind of welcoming and rehabilitating culture, that kind of player development that the Dodgers have. It is the blue chip per 1% outcome that every Major League Baseball team should be striving for. And yes, not every single Major League Baseball team can offer $60 million a year to a player. But the things that the Dodgers have been doing for years in terms of player development, in terms of low-risk rehabilitation projects from other teams, guys like Chris Taylor and Max Muncy, they were rotting in Seattle and Oakland as players that couldn't get on the field, and the Dodgers turned them into everyday stars. I talk about Dodger magic all the time. Didn't work for Michael Conforto? Okay, let's go out there and sign Kyle Tucker. They are the class of baseball, and I'm always going to respect greatness. I hope the Red Sox, when they finally make it back to the World Series, aren't matched up against them, but I will always respect greatness. And all of you should too. The problem with Major League Baseball has always been TV contracts and ownership. There's a lot of people that own Major League Baseball franchises, which are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, that don't want to spend like it. Hopefully, during this potential lockout we have coming next year, we are going to see positive change for the future of the game of baseball, because the talent is at an all-time high. The money and revenue is at an all-time high. The viewership is at an all-time high. And in big part, that is because of what the Dodgers have built out there in Southern California. So I'm not going to hate on them. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to enjoy every single pitch I can here in 2026. From the World Baseball Classic to the last out of the World Series, soak up and enjoy as much baseball as you can, because there's just as good of a shot as there was a couple days ago that there will be some missed baseball in 2027. This does not move the needle for me. I do not think this will move the needle for the owners. Kyle Tucker is a great player. He is not necessarily a future Hall of Famer. He is not necessarily an MVP. He is a great player added to a great organization. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we throw back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And honestly, January 17th had a litany of things that I could choose from Hall of Fame birthdays to Hall of Fame deaths to some famous signings and different things. But I wanted to talk about this because it's also topical to some of the stuff that I haven't gotten to talk about on the pod yet. That on this date in 2005, Roger Clemens asked for $22 million in salary arbitration, which was at the time the highest amount ever asked for. The previous record amount submitted for in arbitration by any player was $18.5 million by New York Yankees shortstop Derek Jeter. They ended up agreeing to $18 million. This was 20 years ago. Roger Clemens was a multi-time Cy Young winner. The difference between his ask and his contract that he ended up signing for, $4 million. Tarek Skubal, and I have it Row Tarek for the Scooby-Dooby-Doo memes that they have with his last name. Tarek Skubal asked for $32 million. Asked for $10 million more than Roger Clemens did 2 decades ago. And the gap between what the Tigers were willing to pay and what Tarek Skubal wanted was $13 million. They were more around what Roger Clemens ended up settling for. And the most a pitcher has ever gotten in arbitration is David Price at 19.75. And while David Price wasn't coming off back-to-back Cy Young awards, he did have a Cy Young award in his showcase, and his overall career in the majors up to that point, in terms of WAR and strikeouts and wins, was more impressive than what Tarek Skubal has put on paper. And I want all of you out there to understand what an arbitration hearing essentially does. Is the player asks for one number, the team submits one number, and what they have to do in this hearing, which is essentially a closed little courtroom, is they have to the judge will set a middle number, a median number, and the team will have to argue why the player isn't worth that number, and the player will have to argue why the player is worth more than that number. With the contracts that are being handed out in Major League Baseball today, you would think it's really easy for Tarek Skubal to prove that he's worth whatever that median number is between 19 and 32. But based on the history of arbitration hearings and cases and settlements, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think Tarek Skubal is going to be able to put enough information out there where whoever is running this hearing is going to be able to say, yes, what you've done is $7 million plus, more impressive than David Price back in 2007. Or no, 2009, excuse me. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. Now, what this does mean, though, is I think this was a public statement by Tarek Skubal saying, hey, if you won't pay me long term, I should at least get paid this year by you if you want to keep me. Otherwise, trade me. I think that this was that kind of statement. And what I hope doesn't end up happening, which has now happened twice this offseason, is that the Mets felt like they had the best offer for a big name, Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker, ended up getting outbid by the Dodgers. Because if Tarek Skubal gets traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers at the peak of his powers, I think you're going to see a lot of baseball fans, even the ones that are like me saying that the Dodgers are not ruining baseball, some of those people are going to turn, because that is a huge move to get him in a rotation with Yamamoto, with Ohtani, with Snell, and with Glasnow. That kind of starting rotation would be absurd. The New York Mets seem like the best fit, though. They have the young pitching to trade, whether it be fellow USA teammate Nolan McLean, whether it be Jonah Tong, whether it be Brandon Sproat, whether it be Jet Williams or Carson Finge or Francisco Alvarez or Brett Beatty. Some combination of those young players can get you Tarek Skubal, and the New York Mets have the dollars to then extend him. They need a pitcher like that at the top of the rotation. They do. And I hope that this arbitration hearing, which unfortunately will not be super public, we'll find out eventually what they settle at, is the first domino effect, as we talked about with Okamoto signing with the Blue Jays. This is the domino effect that leads to a Tarek Skubal trade sometime between now and opening day. And wouldn't it be funny if, while pitching for Team USA, Nolan McLean and Tarek Skubal are traded for each other or become teammates? Just another thing to follow, and I hope you guys get excited here, because as the free agent board begins to be unloaded, still Cody Bellinger out there, still Framber Valdez out there, still guys like Zach Gallen out there, a lot of names still to find homes that will be starters for Major League Baseball team, not just guys trying to make the roster, starters. The trade market is going to start heating up. Tarek Skubal is obviously the bigger name. We'll tell Marte be back on the market. The Red Sox are going to trade for an infielder. There's a lot of things that are going to happen between now and pitchers and catchers in a couple of weeks, and I will be here to cover all of that with you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you leave a like on the video, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Leave me a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're an audio-only listener. It really helps the show. And make sure you share this out with a baseball fan who loves the game as much as we do. I'm Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys